Hello, and today we're back on Forza Motorsport 7 and we're going to be doing an investigation to find the fastest SUV in the game. So initially this investigation was done back on Forza Motorsport 6 by Fail Race, and he concluded that the Porsche Cayenne 2012 was the fastest alongside the BMW X6M. However, he got to use the Lamborghini Urus, and also since then two new cars have actually been introduced into the market which have higher PI ratings than both cars I've mentioned before. Most notably is the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, which has enough horsepower to outmuscle the Dodge Charger Hellcat, and also the Porsche Cayenne, which also is well, yes, it doesn't have as crazy statistics as the Trackhawk, but still packs a punch in the SUV market. So yeah, those two cars seem to have the edge over some of the cars tested in Forza Motorsport 6, so it'll be interesting to see how they perform. Yeah, the first race would take us to Yas Marina, and we had a reverse PI grid with the Cadillac Escalade leading us off. Yeah, this car was pretty much a boat compared to some of the other cars. It was, yeah, the only E-Class car in the field, and yeah, it was much slower, and immediately was coming under pressure from the Volkswagen Touareg, which was the second lowest PI car of the field. Even so, it would have no trouble going straight around the outside of the Cadillac Escalade up into the lead of the race. Yeah, a car making quite good positions in the early laps was the Porsche Macan, and this car was mid C-Class, so it was starting in the mid-pack in terms of where the cars started, and yeah, straight away we'd actually get past the Escalade, which was already plummeting through the field, and we'd also get two cars on the brakes, already moving up into P3 after starting P10 or something. So a really good start for the Macan as it powers down the straight now, just able to find the room, and well, yeah, because it started quite near the front compared to some of the other B-Class and A-Class cars, and you can see straight away the Porsche Macan powers past into the lead, and yeah, would actually hold that lead for quite a long time, as he was just able to pull away from the D-Class and lower C-Class cars. Meanwhile, my BMW X6M was well, sort of in the walls right now. We were probably going three wides, which is not something you see often with SUVs, as lots of our B-Class cars were trying to sort of work our way through the upper ends of the C-Class cars, and yeah, we were having quite a tough time with things, because as you can imagine, when SUVs are three wides, there's not much space to really put your SUV in, and sure enough, I tried to hang around the outside of one of the older Jeep Cherokees and actually lose out to the Mercedes and nearly the Jeep Trackhawk as well, which would pull to my inside, but eventually I would actually manage to hold it around the outside as we go side by side into the next corner. The Jeep on the outside would actually get boxed up behind the Mercedes, and that would allow me to actually have the inside for the next corner, as we actually now pull alongside the Jeep, the Mercedes, and yeah, the Jeep now under pressure from the Porsche Cayenne as we now pull alongside the other Jeep, and we're going to get both of them as well. We're actually going to go around the outside of the Cadillac Escalade as well, which is sort of holding up a chain on the inside line, and that's going to allow us and the Porsche Cayenne to gain a few positions there. Meanwhile, the Jeep Trackhawk was actually stuck behind him. So yeah, up at the front, the Volkswagen Touareg was actually holding on much better than the Cadillac Escalade, and although it was much lower PI than most of the other cars, it was actually holding on quite well. However, it was overtaken by the Lincoln Continental, which is actually the only non-SUV in this investigation. It was just basically a benchmark to see how these SUVs would perform against, well, sort of a saloon car. And yeah, you can see up in front of these guys, yeah, the Lincoln would actually go and chase down the Range Rover 2012, which would actually been able to pull quite a bit of a gap to this battling pack for what will be, well, now fifth place, as the X5 had actually already overtaken the Volkswagen Touareg, and actually I'll follow through in what will be probably P5, P6. So yeah, the Volkswagen Touareg was slowly losing positions, and another car losing positions quite quickly was the Volvo XC90, so the third of the D-Class and below cars, and yeah, you can see there the Trackhawk getting past quite easily, and would now be stuck behind well, one of the older Jeep Cherokees as it tried to make its way through the field. And you can see just up ahead was actually the Porsche Cayenne, and actually made much better progress than the Trackhawk, just able to sort of find the gaps in the field, and again was trying to crawl to the inside of an Audi Q7. Yas Marina being quite a good track for overtaking with these SUVs, and again the Porsche Cayenne would show that it was easily possible, as it would breeze past the Q7. Would also try to get the Touareg as well, and would now pull right behind the F-Pace, even so would not manage to get it on the brakes, as the F-Pace would have the outside line and would be able to hold on to the position. But yeah, the Cayenne was making really good progress, and meanwhile the Cadillac Escalade had already fallen to right at the back of the field, and yeah, it has gone from first to 21st in about 2 laps. So yeah, nowhere near the pace of even the D-Class cars in the field. The Cadillac Escalade really struggled throughout the investigation, as to be expected, and yeah, was already dropping heaps of time to the cars ahead. Meanwhile, the Porsche Cayenne was actually having revenge on the Jaguar F-Pace and was actually trying to get up the inside, something which hadn't actually been able to do at the beginning of the lap. But this time, we'd actually be able to get them under brakes, and they would go side by side for the next part of the straight. The Porsche Cayenne hang out to dry on the outside, but again, as we entered the long straight, the Porsche Cayenne would actually be able to outpower the Jaguar F-Pace. Of course, that car with 550 horsepower, one of the most powerful cars in the field, and yeah, much faster than the Jaguar F-Pace. Meanwhile, I caught back up to the 2012 Range Rover, which had actually been holding up P2 for quite a long time, but yeah, still had been dropping quite a lot of time to the Porsche Macan up ahead, so it was crucial that I tried to get past this car as soon as possible. I'd already managed to pass the Lincoln Continental. Of course, the Lincoln, although it was quite a fast saloon, was nowhere near the pace of some of the most powerful SUVs in the field. But again, we'll just try to muscle our way past the towards the outside of the Range Rover 2012, and we actually managed to get it to the outside. The Range Rover really good in the straight line, but not that good in the corners, and that allowed my BMW to pull right to the inside, and that would be us up into P2 and chasing down the Porsche Macan, who'd already managed to bring a massive lead as a result of gaining so many positions on that one. So the Porsche Macan definitely looked quite a strong car, considering it was mid C-Class and was racing against some B-Class cars. Meanwhile, you can see now this is the Jeep Cherokee Track Corp, now behind the Mercedes, the B-Class Mercedes, and yeah, it was actually struggling to make its way through the field. And another car which was also struggling was the Range Rover SVR, this car made in 2015, a more powerful version of the 2012 Range Rover Supercharged, and yeah, eventually was making positions. Of course, with its rapid straight line speed, that and the Track Corp were gaining positions, but as you can see, as soon as he got to the corner, he was even struggling to overtake some of the lower class C-Class cars. So yeah, again, it would eventually overtake what would be the Audi Q7, and yeah, behind that was actually the Lamborghini Urus, and yeah, this and the Levante were struggling even more than the other cars. And yeah, although it was eventually eventually making positions through the fields, yeah, I mean, they're still struggling to really find gaps. But yeah, the D-Class and the E-Class cars, as to be expected, were sort of filtering the way down to the back of the field. Meanwhile, you can see now this is actually the Track Corp being put under pressure by the Mercedes, which is just overtaken, boxed in behind the Jaguar F-Pace. It's nearly going to actually lose another position to the Range Rover SVR. So it's all well and good having the most powerful car in the field, but if it can't find the gaps, it just finds itself getting boxed in, especially as the driver cars like to hog this slipstream all too often. They're not that good at finding really overtakes, but again, would actually be able to overtake the Jaguar F-Pace, and that would go in search of the Mercedes again, trying to sort of re-overtake it. And look at the speed, it just had so much more speed than the Mercedes. Again, the driver car's not really pulling to the inside as quickly as a human would, but again, the Track Corp was still pull alongside, but would actually lose out on the braking and would have to hold on to P9 for the time being. And up ahead of these guys was actually the Porsche Cayenne. As I was saying, it was making really good progress along with my BMW X6, and they'll now catch up to the pack, which would now be for battle for third place, so it would overtake the Lincoln Continental pretty easily, and goes searching for the Range Rover 2012 up ahead, which was now in third place after I'd overtaken it. But still, the Lincoln was trying to hold on, but again, as we've seen so many times, the Porsche Cayenne was just able to outpower these C-Class cars down the straight, and that would be the Porsche up into fourth place. Meanwhile, the Macan had an almighty lead, but my BMW X6 was just, well, in the class of its own, really, in terms of compared to the C-Class cars, and being able to catch it by about 4 seconds a lap, even with me using brake assist against unbeatable AI. And eventually I would pull to the outside and would try to go around the outside of the Porsche Macan. The Porsche Macan actually holding its own. It's actually a very good C-Class car, considering it's probably 100 PI lower than my car, but it was still managing to hold its own. And again, it's actually got probably even it's actually been able to hold it through the corners alongside, again just trying to outbrake it. But again, the Porsche Macan managing to stick its nose in, and yeah, it was actually really impressive, the Porsche Macan, considering it's not one of the best cars in the field, but again was actually managing to dice it with the BMW X6M. It would actually throw itself to the inside, and the X6 would actually temporarily lose out the lead. But as you can imagine, on the straight line, it had no match for the BMW X6, and I'll breeze past up into the lead. A similar move was actually going on in the battle for P3, as the newer Porsche Cayenne was actually putting the Range Rover 2012 under pressure for what would be third place. And you can see behind the Track Hawk had finally been able to break free of the pack behind and was actually fighting the Lincoln for what would be 5th place. The Lincoln actually holding on really well, considering the saloon was actually 100 pi lower than most of the some of these B-class cars. Again, the Porsche Cayenne would finally get past the Range Rover, and the Track Hawk would do an identical move on the Lincoln and do power down the straight. You can see the Range Rover actually hanging alongside the Porsche Cayenne in terms of speed, but these guys had no match for the Track Hawk, who would again just breeze past down the straight. Will eventually get boxed in behind the Range Rover, but again, yeah, as soon as you got to a straight, if the Track Hawk was able to get to the inside, as you can see there, was just able to get past almost every car in the field. With 707 horsepower, it's literally was unrivaled in terms of straight line speed, and yeah, we managed to get past the Range Rover pretty easily. Even so, the Range Rover itself was quite a fast car in the straight line, and that would be the Track Hawk up into what would be 4th place, and that would hunt down the Porsche Cayenne. You can see now this was actually the Range Rover and the Urus. These B-class cars again, although at the beginning were struggling to make their way through the field, along with the Porsche Cayenne 2012, were eventually actually pulling up, well, getting to the front of the field as to be expected, as well, sort of there was a role reversal from the starting grid as the D and E class cars filtered to the back and the A and B class cars sort of filtered to the front. And talking about the only A class car in the field, the Jeep Track Hawk would pull past the Porsche Cayenne pretty easily, and that would be that up into 3rd place. You could just see how much it was able to pull on the straight. I mean, the Porsche Cayenne 2018 is not a slow car at all. Yeah, that was it. That was full foul to the Jeep Track Hawk, and immediately the Jeep Track Hawk, within a lap or so, would catch up to the Macan. And you can see the Macan, even though it had a massive lead early on, unsurprisingly, it would fall foul to the A and B class cars. Actually holding on to the Jeep Track Hawk for quite a long time, considering the Jeep Track Hawk is so much faster than everything else. I mean, in clean air, it was lapping 7 or 8 seconds faster than even the Cayenne and myself. So that car is something else. And yeah, although it sort of lost a lot of time early on, it would actually go hunting down me for the lead. And yeah, that would go down to the finish. Meanwhile, this was actually the Mercedes, and we hadn't actually talked about the Mercedes too much, but it actually had made quite good progress as well. The lowest of the B-class cars was actually ahead of the Lamborghini Urus and the Range Rover SVR, as they tried to overtake the Range Rover Supercharged, who had actually held on to P2 for so long in the race, but now was actually falling through the field quite rapidly as the B-class cars had finally really got a footing in the race. Eventually actually holding on for the to this younger brother for the time being, but eventually would fall foul of the SVR. Meanwhile, on the last lap, the battle between the Cayenne and the Macan went down right to the line. The Cayenne, of course, much stronger through the corners and on the straights than the Macan, but the Macan was able to build up a lead quite early on as a result of, well, his lap 1 sort of dominance. But again, the Cayenne on the straight with straight line speed is actually going to try to pull alongside, but it's actually getting boxed behind, and actually that was how it would finish. My BMW X6M would actually win just in the end from the Jeep Track Hawk, which had hunted me down very quickly, and then the Macan would hold on P3 against the Cayenne. P5 would be the Mercedes, and of course the Urus would be P6. For race 2, once again, the Volkswagen Touareg would pull past the Cadillac Escalade, but this time we'll actually be doing a sprint race instead of a sort of a feature race. So this time only 5. Yet again, the Porsche Macan was actually one to watch, and he was actually already making quite a few positions, as you can imagine. Yeah, it was probably the most underrated car of the field in terms of PI, and that gave it an advantage in these reverse grid races. Towards the front still, the Jaguar F-Pace was actually having quite a good start this time, and would actually pull alongside what would be the Jeep Cherokee of 2009. So that's the oldest of the Jeep Cherokees in the field. And yeah, towards the back, the Porsche Cayenne, the Porsche Cayennes were trying to make their way through the field, sort of both ganging up on a Jeep Cherokee there as they make their way through, and you can see we're just behind them, along with the new Jeep Track Hawk. So yeah, again, we were trying to make our way through the field as quickly as possible, but of course there was much more time pressure in this one, as it was only 5 laps instead of a 10-lap race. Out in front, the Escalade was somehow holding on to P2, P3, and was holding up a right train, and eventually the Porsche Macan would be able to wrestle its way past. But yeah, the thing with the Escalade was on these tight twisty tracks, it's actually able to hold into the position quite well, because it's such a long car, it's actually quite hard to overtake. and the Volvo was trying to go around the outside. Eventually, it would manage to get itself to the inside line and would finally be able to overtake. But still, I mean, the Escalade was really holding up everyone, and as only people were only overtaking it one at a time, yeah, we had a really tight pack, and that was allowing some of the C-Class cars up front to escape. But yeah, eventually, as one got past, they all started to filter through, as the Escalade, once again, was getting filtered to the back of the pack. Yeah, this time was holding on much better than Yas Marina. Meanwhile, we were battling with the Trackhawk again. After just about holding on the victory to the Trackhawk, we are now chasing it down this time, as it was working its way through the field. Again, the BMW X6M and the Trackhawk were much faster than these C-Class cars on the straight line, and through the corners for that matter. So again, we were just trying to find spaces in order to overtake, but that was easier said than done when you got SUVs going 3 wide down the straight. And again, the Trackhawk trying to pull to the outside of what will be one of the Cayennes. We would actually try to follow it through as we tried to go side by side 3 wide through that corner. Didn't really work with the SUVs. I had to back out with that in the end, as the 2 Cayennes would actually filter out behind us. Oh, actually, one ahead and one behind. As we skip on a bit later, this is actually our pack now catching up to the Cadillac Escalade. I practically pushed the Jeep Trackhawk past, as the unfortunately one of the Cayennes got slightly boxed in, and we would sort of pull a bit ahead of them as a result. Again, up ahead, you can see quite a lot of the C-Class cars which have managed to get past at the beginning. Meanwhile, at the front, the Volkswagen Touareg was actually coming under attack by what will be was coming under attack by quite a lot of vehicles. One of them was the Mercedes-Benz, the B-Class car, again having a really good start, and this time it was actually battling for P3, an even better position than the last race. And yeah, the Touareg was holding on quite well, but would eventually lose out its podium spot. And yeah, up front was the Jaguar F-Pace. I'd been able to get a much better start, but again was coming under increasing pressure from the Porsche Macan. The Porsche, again, just such a fast car considering it's quite low down, and yes, it was no match for the B-Class cars as to be expected, but was again right at the front still in these reverse grid races. Yeah, the mid-pack was still very tight. We managed to navigate past the Cadillac Escalade, but now we had to get past the Lincoln Continental. Again, this sedan not as fast as some of these SUVs in the straight line, and the Porsche would actually try to get past it. We tried to follow it through as we tried to go 3 wide, which is never a really good idea. The Porsche finally getting past, I think, another car as we go into which will be actually the Volkswagen, as we actually slot in behind the Levante, and yeah, the Volkswagen losing a few more positions, and that would actually be as it's finished with the Jaguar F-Pace up in the front. And yeah, next up, I took each of the cars for a spin around the Top Gear test track, with the exception of the Lincoln Continental, as that isn't really an SUV. And yeah, the results are actually quite fascinating, as the Porsche Cayenne 2018 actually had the fastest lap by only a tenth over the Lamborghini Urus. The Jeep Trackhawk all the way down in 3rd place, which actually surprised me considering it was so much faster than everyone else at Yas Marina. The Porsche Cayenne 2012 was actually take 4th place ahead of my BMW X6M. So yeah, that sort of correlates from the Forza 6 results. The Porsche Macan would actually take 6th, which was very surprising considering it's a C-Class car, and would actually outperform the Mercedes 63 AMG and the Maserati Levante, which are both B-Class cars. Right at the bottom, wasn't really much of a surprise. The Volvo, the Volkswagen, and the Cadillac were basically nowhere compared to some of the rest of these cars. And yeah, the third race would take us to Watkins Glen, and this time we would actually do a normal PI race. So the fastest cars would start at the front, the slowest at the back, as to make it quite fair in terms of finding which one's the fastest. Straight away, my car would actually go a bit wayward, and I would actually have to defend from the Range Rover as it gets a really good run down the long straightaway. And yeah, straight away, I was trying to put the pressure on the Porsche Cayenne, but eventually actually I nearly lose the position to the Range Rover. But again, just managing to hold on as we go into the next sector, the sector which actually my BMW was actually flying in. Right at the back, as to be expected, was the Cadillac Escalade, and yeah, by that one it completely dropped off the rest of the pack as we turn our attention back to the front. And yeah, there wasn't much excitement in this race, as to be expected. Yes, there was quite tight packs, but there wasn't many overtakes. I think the tightest of the packs was actually our B-Class group, as you had the Urus and the newer Porsche Cayenne battling for P2, and meanwhile I was pressuring the older of the 2 Porsche Cayennes for P4 as I go slightly wayward, as I missed my braking point quite a bit, this time actually not using brake assist, as the AI actually quite fast around Watkins Glen on Unbeatable, so I may as well just use my normal assists. You can see now this is the Jaguar F-Pace, and as well was sort of in a bit of no man's land, sort of dropping off the pack of the upper end of the C-Class cars, and sort of pulling away from the lower end C-Class cars. I mean, yeah, the F-Pace really wasn't, yeah, I mean, it was sort of where it was to be expected. But yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't actually many overtakes at all. I think, well, yeah, I mean, it sort of shows the PI system on Forza is quite good to start with, but it also shows that you can't really, but the AI don't really try to overtake on this game. Again, they just sort of hog the slipstream, and yeah, they don't really pull out. So again, the driver tires probably could be improved for next game, as they sort of hog the slipstream too much. But meanwhile, at the front of the C-Class cars, the Mercedes G65 was actually out in front, the highest of the C-Class cars, but completely dropped off the B-Class pack. Again, much slower than the Mercedes up front and the Maserati Levant. Again, up front was the closest battle, and yeah, behind, but there's actually quite a few battles. We've actually the Porsche Macan, the only C-Class car to actually gain the position, and actually that will gain a position on the Jeep Cherokee 2014. But yeah, apart from that, there was no position changes at all in the C-Class group, which was quite, it was a bit of a shame. The only overtakes really came from the B-Class group, as I get a really good run on the Porsche Cayenne 2012, as we actually zoomed down the straight. Of course, you saw in the time trials these cars quite equally matched, so yeah, my car really not really gaining too much per lap, but again, just able to go to the inside. That's going to give me the outside line for the next part of the corner, and of course this is sort of the racing line. I'm able to actually cut ahead, and that's actually us up into what will be P4, so we're one of the only guys to gain a position. And yeah, as well, you can see the Porsche Macan again hounding the Dodge Durango SRT, I think, a car we haven't actually spoken about much, but again, yeah, just struggling to get past really. Again, as I said, the AI not really good at overtaking each other compared to other games I've raced, like Project Cars 2 and Forza F1 2017. So yeah, that was a bit of a shame this race, but still there was quite a bit of action lower end of the field. I would actually make a bit of a mistake coming up the S section at the beginning of the lap, and that would allow the Porsche Cayenne back at me. I was actually closing down the other Porsche Cayenne to begin with, but actually now I would actually come onto attack, and this time I'd have to defend around the outside, do the same move I did before, and this time actually just managing to keep ahead, even to the Porsche Cayenne giving me a much harder time that time. Again, there was actually another up front, the Jeep Trackhawk and the Lamborghini Urus had already caught up to the back of the Cadillac Escalade and were actually trying to lap it. But yeah, again, the driver tires just couldn't really navigate their way around the Cadillac, even though it was such a slow car. And again, as I've said, the Cadillac is such a long car as well, so it's no good just getting your nose alongside the Cadillac. You need to get your whole car alongside it if you want to really pull a move on it. And again, it was holding up a right train down the straight, and that actually allowed the Urus to get past. So this is the most action we've really seen all race, as a few more cars were trying to filter through. The Urus managed to get the position. The Cayenne would also try to get the Trackhawk, and we'd actually try to get it as well, but we'd actually get boxed in. The Trackhawk eventually getting past the Cadillac Escalade, and we'll follow it through. The Trackhawk would actually getting a bit wayward. We'd try to work our way to the inside. We'd actually get tagged a bit, and that means we'd actually defend from the Cadillac again. But again, just easily holding on to that position, as the other Porsche Cayenne now was actually getting up the inside as to be expected, and that would actually pave the way for the SVR and the other two P-Class cars to find their way past the Cadillac. But of course, the Cadillac wasn't the only worry, as soon enough we were actually going to be catching the Volkswagen Touareg. Even so, the other two B-Class cars, which actually still hadn't got past the Cadillac cars, the Levant seeing the opportunity to actually put a move on the Mercedes-Benz, and again the only action really was in the B-Class group, thanks to these lap cars. But yeah, the Mercedes-Benz trying to hold it around the outside of the Levant, but the Levant's just going to the inside line, and the Cadillac sort of moves over to the racing line, boxing in the Mercedes, and yeah, as a result, the Levant gets a position. And yeah, sure enough, the Urus had actually caught up to the back of the Volkswagen Touareg, and again we would go 3 wide, as the Trackhawk actually getting the position back on the Cayenne, who would actually lose out to us as well. As we go up the straight, we still haven't got past the Touareg. I was actually trying to get past the Trackhawk now, but again, just trying to be mindful that of course you can't really go 3 wide up this corner. Again, sort of backing out that move of the Urus, just trying to protect his lead from the Jeep Cherokee Trackhawk. There goes the track court now. He's actually going to power pass on the first part of the straight. But again, they haven't got past the Volkswagen Touareg. All this battling between us, and we still haven't got past the Touareg. Again, I don't know why. The driver cars just don't want to pull a move on it. They don't want to pull out of the slipstream. They're just too busy trying to hog the slipstream. And meanwhile, you can see we're actually trying to pull a move on what will be the Urus. We've actually managed to get him past him, but again, he's going to have the racing line for the second part of the corner. We were actually able to get 2 positions around the outside of this corner, and the Urus is actually going to defend from us using our same tactics. It would have to slot in for P3, and you can see actually the Porsche Cayenne 2012 had actually overtaken its younger brother, and we're actually trying to get the you can see the track cork now would actually be overtaken again by the Urus, and this was the last lap of the race. And yeah, it would have been quite a dull race until now, but all leveling up as we're just trying to find our way past the Volkswagen. We've actually, most of us have actually managed to find our way past by now. But yeah, again, it was a photo finish between all of the B-class cars. 7 cars nose to tail. I think the Mercedes had dropped off a bit because it was stuck behind the Cadillac. But again, it would actually be the Urus who would hold on for the win from the cheap track cork. We would get 3rd place in a hectic finish, and the Porsche Cayenne 2012 would get 4th place as we round the final corner. And yeah, the Urus getting a surprising victory in the end. The second of the normal PI good races would be around Silverstone, and this would be a sprint race. So unfortunately, that cars wouldn't really get in the way. So yeah, as could be expected, this race was probably just as dull as the last one. And straight from the get-go, it was obvious there was not going to be many overtakes. But again, for the validity of the investigation, I may as well just do a reverse and a normal PI grid race, just to make sure I know which cars are good and which cars are bad, if you know what I mean. But again, the only real battle was among the B-class cars. You can see now the Levant again trying to get up the inside of the Mercedes, and for the 2nd race in a row would actually get the overtake on the Mercedes. So although the Mercedes has done really well in the reverse PI grid races, it was actually struggling in the normal PI grid races, both times losing out of position. But again, our B-class pack was pulling quite quickly away from the C-class, and the track cork again was pulling away from us really quickly. Just like in Las Marina, it was much faster than everyone else. Again, about 5-6 seconds a lap faster. Meanwhile, you can see the Levant hadn't, one position wasn't enough. Even so, nobody else was making overtakes. The Levant was trying to make overtakes himself. Would actually pull to the inside of the Range Rover. The Range Rover this time actually trying to hang it around the outside. The first really good side-by-side racing we'd seen in these normal PI grid races. And again, the Range Rover would actually hold on and actually would hassle me this time as we head on to the end of the lap. The Range Rover is actually quite good at braking at this corner, and would actually close in a bit under brakes. I would actually go a bit wide. That would allow the Range Rover around the outside. But okay, the Range Rover might be good in a straight line, but it's nowhere near as good as my car around the corners. And again, I'd have the inside line for this corner. But yeah, the Range Rover actually able to hold it on the outside a bit, which was quite impressive. As we go side by side, I'm going to have the inside corner line for the turn 1, and actually I'm just able to inch ahead just before the turn and actually hold on to the position. But again, as we actually skip on to the end of the lap, I actually make a bit of a mistake, and that's actually now going to allow the Range Rover completely past, and the Range Rover would only become the 2nd car in the race to make an overtake. Yeah, meanwhile out front, the Jeep Track Hawk again was much faster than everyone else. The straight lines, lots of straights in Silverstone really suiting this car, and yeah, like in Las Marina, it was flying completely, and it had been able to pull such a gap to our pack. And meanwhile, yeah, I was actually trying to get revenge on the Land Rover. We're already on the penultimate lap of this 5-lap race. Again, I'm sorry, nothing really much happened, but yeah, for the validity of this investigation, it's only fair that we do a normal PI race. But you can see I'm trying to actually get my position back from the Range Rover, because it's a bit embarrassing considering I'm one of only 2 cars which has been overtaken in this race. But yeah, eventually I would have my revenge, so we skip to the final straightaway. I'd actually easily breeze past the Land Rover, and that would be me up into P5. So yeah, the Maserati Levant, the only car to actually gain a position the whole race. And yeah, as I was saying, not really the most exciting race. Anyway, for the final challenge, we headed to the drag strip, and yeah, we would have to separate ourselves into 3 separate heats because there's 21 cars. But Forza cleverly allows you to actually compare times from heat to heat, so that's what we'll be doing. And you can see straight away the 2 B-class cars in my X6 and the Mercedes up ahead. We began to pull away quite quickly from the rest of the field, and as we crossed the line, it's actually 12.534 for our BMW X6 M, which would be 2nd in our heat, but actually only 8th overall. And the Mercedes up ahead would actually get 4th place. Yeah, but the Jeep Cherokee once again was really fast in the straight line. That thing has over 700 horsepower. It's literally unrivaled. The Range Rover being 2nd, getting its best result of the day, and the Urus would round out the top 3. And at the bottom, we had our usual culprits in D and E class. And yeah, I think apart from that, there wasn't really any surprises. The B class cars generally outperformed the C class cars, and vice versa. So yeah, as we head on to the final points tally, you can actually see the Jeep Cherokee unsurprisingly won after a really good last few rounds, and of course a really good time trial. The Urus was in second, sort of propped up by, again, the last few rounds, and the Porsche Cayenne would round up the top three. My X6M would be in fourth, followed by the other Porsche Cayenne, the older one. And at the bottom, of course, we had the usual culprits in the Volvo, the Volkswagen, and the Cadillac, which were really well off the pace. And yeah, the Cadillac would be a long way behind anyone else. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, I mean, the only real surprise was really the Porsche Macan. That really outperformed its PI. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, it was as to be expected. But yeah, see you next time.